They know that we are soft on criminals. They know that we have created a criminal-free space here. They know that we are not serious about reducing crime. And that is why our numbers are going up.
It's been a rough 2020. 1,300 people murdered across Jamaica last year, the majority with a gun. And since January 1, more than 100 cut down. Then the problems of domestic violence and a complete breakdown of public order have shown little sign of reversal. But is the prescription another round of states of public emergency? Hello, I'm Damian Mitchell, and thank you for joining us for this special Gleaner Editors Forum. Today, 3 former members of the Police High Command weigh in on the crime crisis, where Admiral Hardley Lewin, a retired Army chief, was the police commissioner from 2007 to 2009. Owen Ellington, who spent 34 years as a policeman, was commissioner from 2009 to 2014. And Novlette Grant, a 37-year member of the force, was deputy commissioner of police from 2014 to 2018. Ms. Grant, may I start by allowing you 2 minutes for your initial thoughts on Jamaica's crime crisis?
This crisis is a decades-old one. It is not new. There are frequent calls for crime plans, but I can tell you that crime plans abound at the national and institutional levels. I think what the real issue is about implementation of these plans with a coordinated approach for all the stakeholders who have ownership of different elements of the plan, and our ability to monitor, to evaluate, and really have an impact assessment to know what it is that we're doing that is working, what needs to be fixed. Those are the issues that I believe we are falling down on. When you look in these plans, there are preventative elements within the plan, but we are very caught up in a very police-centric approach where the belief is that the criminal legal solution is the only way to get to where we want to go. And we have to look at all the other aspects of dealing with this. Violence is really a public health crisis. And we need to really be serious about taking that approach and recognizing that it is necessary to have the stakeholders who have, as I said, responsibility for different areas of the preventative part of the plan, and the stakeholders who have responsibility for the reactive portions of the plan in a coordinated way, and so that we know where we're going. Right now, I think we are overall very disjointed and not really able to fully evaluate what we're doing. What is the impact of all the things that we're doing?
In the discussion, but let me go now to Mr. Owen Ellington, a former commissioner. Your 2 minutes on Jamaica's crime crisis, Mr. Ellington.
Okay, whenever we have any spike in violence and an increase in public fear of crime, there are always calls for new crime plans or reform of the police force or transformation of the police force, even disbanding of it. But the truth of the matter is that we've been a violent society for well over 50 years. We've been a society that embraces lawlessness. It's actually culturally rooted, the way we conduct ourselves, both at home and abroad. We have a overworked police force, which oftentimes is even overproducing in terms of the amount of arrests that they make, guns they seize, drugs they seize, etc. But policing is interdependent. It has to depend on other arms of the criminal justice system for the kind of results that we want to see. So if the police are arresting over 4,000 people each year for serious violent crimes, but the courts are only able to dispose of a small fraction of those numbers, then the true deterrent effect of punishment is not applied. And therefore, we're going to see the kind of problems that we're having now. So any attempt at really bringing this crime problem under control is going to have to involve efficiencies all around and a more collaborative approach to dealing with this matter of crime and violence.
Well, I'm going to pick you up shortly on this issue of the true deterrent to crime, but let me go now to Admiral Lewin. For your 2 minutes or 120 seconds, you can pick which one you want.
Thank you. I think in looking at the crime issue, we have to separate the long-term sustainable reduction and what it takes to do that. And that requires the kinds of things that Commissioner Ellington has spoken to in terms of all the parties on deck in a long-term sustainable way to keep, because we're talking about at least 10, 20-year program out, but we got to separate that from the immediate issues where we have to cauterize what is happening. And what I believe people want to see, the citizens of this Jamaica, is to get the feel, to feel up that something is happening. And they have got to be told the truth, that the truth of the matter is there's no magic solutions to this thing. You can change as many commissioners as you want. There's not one who's going to come with that holy grail that's going to immediately fix the problem. It's going to be long-term sustainable and some immediate measures. The tools in the toolbox are not infinite. It's a certain set of tools. It's how you use them in the short term that will bring those short-term results whilst you work simultaneously on the long-term reductions.
Well, let me keep you on that then, Admiral Lewin. Are you able to discern exactly what is the current anti-crime strategy?
Well, when you listen, when I listen to the minister or persons in the security architecture, I get bits and pieces of it. Now, because of my background, I know that there has been a major general strategy that has been there from 2008. Novlette spoke to the fact about implementation. That was almost stillborn. It is that same report that recommended the post of National Security Advisor. But down from that, you would have what has been produced every 3 years, the police corporate plan. Now, what you have is there's not a harmonizing of all the things that are happening in a single document. I think what is missing is that the plan has to be depressed to the divisional level. And how that's work is, what are the policing plans? The policing plans basically sets out how is it that the police intends to deliver policing service to communities. This is not something the police just do on their own. It is something that you develop with communities, drawing on what comes from the commissioner's corporate plan, discuss it with the communities, and publish it so that people know what you intend to do and they feel a part of it. So that is what is missing. They're not a part of it.
Yes. Well, Mr. Ellington, may I bring you in here? Because the question of the states of public emergency has been on so many people's mind. Do you think there should be consideration for another round of states of public emergency in the crime fight?
I think the first thing we need to understand is what is a state of emergency? What's the purpose of a state of emergency? And a state of emergency actually provides the security forces with extraordinary powers, privileges, and immunities to execute a plan. So before we even start talking about requests for another state of emergency, we need to see what the policing strategy is, what it is that the security forces want to do to bring the crime problem under control, what it is that they can do given existing powers, privileges, immunities, and capabilities. Where is the gap between what they want to do and what they are able to do? And this is where a state of emergency is effective. It actually closes a gap and supports a strategy. So in the absence of a clearly articulated crime fighting strategy, outlining certain activities that the security forces want to perform, but which they cannot perform within the boundaries of existing powers and privileges, it's difficult for any person to join in an intelligent discussion about the need for, as well as the lack of need for, a state of emergency. And I think that's where the communication has broken down, both between the operational side and the policy side, because we really don't know what is the strategy that they want to pursue, what it is that they are unable to do within the boundaries of existing powers, and what will be the statutory purpose of a state of emergency. If that is known, we can discuss it.
Well, let me come then to Ms. Grant. Was the years-long and widespread use of SOEs, therefore, blunted in its effectiveness in crime fighting as a weapon?
Well, when I started out, one of the things I said that we have a number of plans, and I will tell you that I go back and say that these plans are not just at the institutional level from the police force. There are plans that are policy plans that speaks about that what they would want to see from the police force, and it goes to what Rear Admiral and Mr. Ellington would have been articulated. No, so the issue has to be there. Once you have the tactical plans well articulated, well communicated to address what it is that you need to achieve, what then of the other national elements of the plan to support the SOEs or the state of emergency, or even forget a state of emergency, because crime is not an issue that is single variable, right? There are many variables that contribute to the violence and the disorder in the country. So we need to be asking the questions about these issues that are supposed to be addressing non-criminal legal issues that lead to crime. So I am not in a position to say whether or not the strategies are efficient. I do know, based on data that I've seen, that in some instances the security forces have been able to curtail for some degree the activities of some of the people who are really violent. But how sustainable is that? How sustainable is that? Go ahead.
The zone of special operations is another tool in the kit that the government has been using. Do you think that is being effective as it is being executed, Ms. Grant?
Because the zone of special operations, from my understanding, was to be on one hand, you have the security forces doing the tactical things that they do, which is to do the arrest, the investigations, and so on. But accompanying that is what we euphemistically refer to as social interventions. But nobody understands really what that looks like. What does that creature look like? How do we know we're having social intervention? The stakeholders who are supposed to be either creating these interventions, executing these interventions, participating in those interventions, and the people who are supposed to be impacted on it. I don't know that we have the kind of communication and the kind of coordination around that. And even the public who might not be directly involved, they can't see, they can't hear it, they don't know what is happening. So the communication portion of it is also weak. And so that is why people keep asking for crime plans, because there is not enough communication about this is what we want to do, this is who will be doing it, this is what we expect to achieve out of it, and this is what we have achieved, good, bad, or otherwise. So those are the gaps that we need to start to really address.
Very well. Erica Virtue has a question coming up, but let me just ask this to the Rear Admiral. Do you reckon that amid Jamaica's resource deficit, the level of investment in the police force will significantly dent crime?
Well, you know, we hear a lot of information about, I think it's 40, whatever the amount that has been spent on the security forces and so on, and that is the greatest single investment in our security apparatus. I will never doubt that. And a significant amount has gone into the security apparatus. The one question I would like to ask, how much went to the police? Simple question. Crime fighting entity, how much went to the police of that large sum? That's all I'd ask. I don't know.
Mr. Ellington, are we seeing any shoots of promise in this investment?
We have to be careful again how we go about talking about investing in the police force, because we could pump any amount of dollars and resources, even increase the manpower strength of the security forces, and the impact is going to be limited to frontline deterrence. That is to say, increased presence, positive externalities. People will refrain from committing crimes in the presence of the police. However, we have to bear in mind the value of deterrence from the courts. That is to say, when persons are arrested, they are tried quickly, and when convicted, they are given harsh sentences that match the crime. And the problem I see with this is that the police could perform as much as they want. They could make as many arrests as they can, seize as many guns, as many drugs. But if the pace of movement of these cases through the courts are as slow as they are now, If the approach to bail is as liberal as it is now, and if the approach to sentencing is as inconsistent as it is now, then the effect of specific and general deterrence is going to be lost. People, when they think about committing a crime, they should immediately be calculating in their mind, if caught, what is the likely punishment? No criminal in Jamaica can even guess what the likely punishment for illegal possession of gun is, murder, possession of cocaine, because people are going to courts, pleading guilty, and walking out or getting off with 4 years for murder. People are held with 60 kilos of cocaine. They can get bail, first appearance in court. Cases take years to be tried, and they end up with a fine if convicted. In most other jurisdictions, persons arrested for these offenses with evidence, they don't get bail before trial. Trial is swift. Punishment is severe and consistent across the board. So persons know what the likely consequence of a crime is before they commit. In Jamaica, nobody knows. And that is one of the things which is undermining effective policing in Jamaica. Because, yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, finish it. I thought you were finished, Owen. Go ahead. Finish what you're saying.
I was just simply saying the slow pace of trial, the inconsistency in sentence, the liberal approach to bail, the lack of mandatory minimum sentence for certain serious violent crimes, all of those create a kind of a landscape in Jamaica where Jamaica is viewed by criminals as a criminal-free space. You can commit any amount of crime, you can get away with it lightly because there is no consistency in treatment of offenders. Not consistent in Jamaica, not consistent when compared with countries that we have relationships with. Many of those countries are actually deporting criminal convicts to us, and we have no consistent approach to punishing them.
Let me allow Admiral Lewin to come in here, and then we'll take a question from Corey Robinson.
Yes, I know Owen a long time. I know harsh sentencing and quick trials has been his mantra. I can agree with him 100% about the courts and their efficiency and getting cases through the courts. Now, harsh sentencing, I'm a little more dubious about that. Let's take an example that there's a 10-year sentence and there's a 50-year sentence for a particular crime, whatever it is. I would submit that what is going to be more of a deterrent is the calculation that that criminal makes before he commits that crime. And the calculation is this: what is the probability that I will not be caught and convicted? And I think he considers that far more than the sentence. He doesn't care about the sentence. What is the probability of me being caught and convicted of this crime if I commit it? That's the deterrent. So we have to be careful where we put that balance in where we discuss deterrence.
Very well. Corey Robinson, can I take you here?
Okay, never mind.
Corey?
Ahead,
my time? No, I would love to hear Mr. Grant on it because I have a question specifically to deterrence. So Mr. Grant, you can go ahead.
When I was a young detective back in the 80s, if simple cases of woundings took a victim 3 years to move through the courts, and it happens repeatedly, what happens is that victims and onlookers begin to lose faith in the justice system. Criminals become emboldened. So that's the point that the two gentlemen were making. The other thing that happens out of that is that criminals start to think that the rule of law really means nothing. And the public also come to that conclusion. And that is what leads to this whole business of reprisals, because it becomes easier to seek solution from jungle justice rather than from the formal system. So all of these are interplaying into the wider problem that we have. And that's why I started off by saying it's a decades-old problem. The brag that you get from people that you arrest is that, sure, soon go on a road, me soon bust this. So the constant cycle of arresting, bailing and releasing, it becomes almost like, I would say, quote unquote, a profession for some of them. Like they are habitual prisoners that goes in, educate the others who are coming behind them how to beat the system. So that is why we talk about, you can't just look at the problem from a police-centric point of view, because the police is the gatekeeper to both the courts and the corrections, and then back into the society. And that is why we have to look at all the elements, right?
We're coming to the issue of the corrections in a short while, and that is something that has to take a lot of scrutiny. But let me go to Corey, and then we'll come to that issue. Corey, go right ahead.
Well, my question is was part that, Damon. I specifically wanted to ask, right? Particularly of Mr. Ellington, with regard to deterrence. How do we use deterrence as an effective tool when we have tons of videos on YouTube of prisoners drinking, smoking, using NSA, well, drinking NSA within the prisons, right? We have inmates also ordering hits from behind bars using cell phones, right? Straight access to cell phones. We have inmates in prisons who are recording music from behind bars. So I'm saying, how are we going to deter a young man from committing crime when they're seeing that even if I get caught, I can go into prison and I am living the life maybe even better than I'm living outside?
Well, let's take it in stages. There are several criminological theories that offer explanations to why people commit crimes. The one that I rely on most when I'm responding to a question like this is the deterrence and rational choice theory. People who get involved in crime, they make a rational choice about it. They calculate the benefits to be derived from committing the crime. And these are mostly material benefits versus the likely consequences to them if they are caught, which is arrest, prosecution, and punishment. And if they, and this comes back to the comment Admiral Lewin made earlier on, if they have a very genuine and high fear about the risk of arrest and the risk of correct conviction and punishment, they will think twice about committing the crime. In fact, they will actually refuse to commit the crime. That's deterrence. But if they believe that they can commit this crime and with a very low possibility of arrest, and even if arrested and convicted, a very low chance of being punished, then they are going to take the risk, they'll commit the crime, they'll get the benefit. And if arrested, they go to prison. And as Corey is saying, some of them enjoy freedom in prison. No, freedom in prison is just simply a breakdown of control of the penal system. Because persons who are sent to prison, they are sent to prison as punishment. Their freedom is taken away. And so inside of prison, they should not have the kind of unfettered access to the cell phone, to the internet, to alcoholic beverages, to opportunities for partying, etc. But that's a completely different discussion and a different approach to how we treat offenders behind bar. They should be so incapacitated.
Except though, former Commissioner Ellington, I have not been hearing the policymakers talking about rehabilitation and a structured program for reintegration as part of the crime fight. And that should be when, as the DCS is reporting, the reoffending rate is 56% for the past 5 years.
Yeah. And so, how do you attempt to rehabilitate a criminal offender, convicted criminal, who has first of all not accepted responsibility for his crime? 10, 15 years later, he's still appealing. He expresses no remorse. He doesn't feel like he owes a debt to society because of what he has done. It's a waste of time attempting to rehabilitate such people. And that is why you have lengthy sentences, including life in prison. Those people should be locked away from the rest of society for the rest of their natural lives.
Am I hearing you saying you're comfortable with the system of rehab and reintegration that exists in the prisons?
What's the question?
Am I hearing you're saying that you are satisfied with the level of rehabilitation and reintegration?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because there's a process known as prisoner classification, where convicted criminals in prison are classified on the basis of risk or need. Those who are high risk should be kept, many of them in high, what you call high security, maximum security confinement, some of them even in solitary confinement. And those who are low risk with a need for reorientation, learning of new skills for reintegration into the society, you focus the rehabilitative efforts on those. But it is for us to know what is the program inside of the prisons, how many of the total prison population, what percentage are considered so high risk and so dangerous that we shouldn't waste taxpayers' money trying to rehabilitate them. What percentage is...
We're fast.
I
want to say something about that.
Yes, okay.
About that prison situation.
Ms. Grant,
the first thing we must concern ourselves with prisoners is that prisoners must be put to work. And they're not working. That's the first thing. The second thing is, we saw the videos of the partying in the prisons and so on. Anyone you want to hazard a guess if any action has been taken? I'm sure it's a violation of prison rule. Has anything happened to them? I rest my case.
So the point is that one of the things that I would challenge people, like, you know, in the media, is to broaden the conversation when we talk about crime. Because for the average citizen on the street, all they hear about is get rid of the police corruption is the reason. While the police has its own challenges, that is not the sum total of what the problem is. And when the narrative gets skewed in this way, then everybody is going to be chasing down that rabbit hole to say, fix this, fix that. If we don't change the public narrative around how we address this rather amorphous problem, we ain't getting anywhere. So we are here talking about this, yes, but how many of us really have any real knowledge about what goes on in there? I certainly don't. We know that sentencing and corrections and so on is about retribution, obviously, punishment, and about restoring harmony to the community. So the community get a sense that you are held accountable for your crime. Where is that? How clearly is that articulated for people? How is the society educated around these matters? So everything is left too much to opinion, to emotions, and not necessarily hard facts.
Well, we're having some comments coming in from
and a forum like this should have had somebody from the DCS there. Here.
Yes, that's a part of the plan. We will continue to look at all angles in respect of crime. But here's a comment coming in from Munir Benjamin on Facebook. He says that the use of technology and forensic science is the way forward, while Flex Duano says that corruption really is the problem. So let me go then to Admiral Lewin. Do you still hold that view you did hold as police commissioner, that there are too many police stations?
I still hold the view that we have to have a look at numbers of police stations, where they are located, but it's not a simple matter of saying we're going to get rid of stations. It's got to be replaced with something. What you must have is policing must be put out into the community. And what we're looking for, it seems to me, now I know the average Jamaican, everybody wants a police station in their community. Do you know how many policemen that ties up just doing a station guard? Just to do that? Policemen belong on the front line. I would prefer, if I live in a particular area, and every 30 minutes or an hour, I see a police patrol drive past my house, rather than have a station next door to me. It is the delivery of policing services, I think that's important. Go through the corporate area and look at all the numbers of stations that we have. I don't think we have made any use or effective use of mobile stations, which as an outreach of community policing, that you move into communities in the days at certain specific times, that's prearranged. And so you put policing in the communities. It's not having a station.
Let me just say something about this whole business of communities though. You have to look at the layout, the geographical, the whole spatial arrangements of a number of communities. In a country where, out of a previous study that was done by the government, where they said that 1/3 of Jamaicans were squatting, with over 500,000 people, probably it's more but now, or in residential squatting, and the rest in commercial and agricultural squatting. And when I have physically gone into spaces that people live there, large numbers of persons, they don't lend themselves to traditional police patrols. These spaces are so disorderly and disorganized that to do the kind of patrol that Admiral just spoke about is almost impossible. Yet, when you look at the reports that you get from the police, a number of incidents of violence and disorder are emanating out of those spaces. So sometimes you end up creating what would be almost a kind of a point where you just place an old car, you find a building and you put police there to try and move out. So it's a question of how do you assess the different communities that we have and their various needs for policing service, and then be able to deliver it. In some of these spaces, the use of technology is not going to benefit you too much, you know, because of the disorganized nature of the spaces and the lack of facilities. So Jamaica has some amount of diversity in terms of community needs, and there is not a one size fit all. You have to look at urban centers versus rural centers. In some of the urban communities where there is a police station, is one police station serving many communities miles apart, but the manpower that is available to deliver service at those stations sometimes is probably 8, 9, 10, sometimes even less. So we have those concerns that we have to really look at and figure out how we address community types in terms of policing services.
There's another element to this, and we're at that point now, that of the disbanding of the police force. It has been proposed, and it is said that this would help to deal with the issue of corruption and the other systemic problems. Mr. Ellington, how doable is that?
It's nonsense. I mean, those who are for it should, you know, maybe find themselves in a place where they can try that, you know, try existing without a police service for a month and see how it works. The Jamaica Constabulary Force is a very effective organization. I think it's overworked and I think it's overproducing. But policing for crime control stops when arrests are made, evidence gathered, and persons put before the court. The rest of it is just being out there trying to deter others from committing offenses. If people are not tried quickly, if they are not punished, they won't understand that there's a cost, there's a personal cost to crime. As it is right now, there's a social cost, there's an economic cost, there's a political cost. I mean, the society is paying dearly for crime, but the criminals are getting away with it because of the approach that we have taken to dealing with offenders. So I don't buy that. I don't think disbanding it is a practical
Sorry for interrupting
proposition.
you. We're almost out of time, but many of the people who are watching this program now on Facebook are commenting about the issue of distrust within the Jamaica Constabulary Force. What then would be the fix?
There is a kind of a narrative which we have allowed to prevail in Jamaica for too long, that people don't trust the police. People don't trust the police, and they call the police 30,000 times per day to make reports. They don't trust the police, and if they are facing danger, they run straight to the police station. They don't trust the police, and the police are the first persons they call when they are in crisis, when they are in fear, etc. The fact of the matter is, people don't trust the system because they know that all the police can do is come to me and request a statement. My name gets on a file. The file goes before the court. When I go to court as a victim, I am the person put on trial, not the accused. So these are the kind of things that make people feel like the police are actually setting up them for further abuse by our criminal justice system. A lot of things can change. For example, people should no longer need to make their way to a police station to lodge a complaint about a crime. They should be able to do it from home with the use of technology. We do not need to have vulnerable victims of crime and witnesses to crime coming to courts, traveling on the same taxi, the same minibus with the friends of the accused to come and give evidence against them. We need to look at a very robust system of witness protection in this country. We have the resources, you know. We can build an entire community for criminal justice witnesses. So there are a whole lot of things that can be done. Almost, it's easier done than said to bring this crime problem under control in Jamaica. It can be done.
This is the last issue we have time for in this section of our editors forum, and it is on the matter of guns. Guns essentially are leaking into the country at a pace of 200 per month, according to the National Security Minister, Dr. Horace Chang. What's the fundamental fix for staunching the flow of illegal and legal guns at the ports? Let me take Rear Admiral, and then we'll go to Ms. Grant on this.
Well, you know, every time this issue comes up, I hear people making the point, we don't make guns in Jamaica. Look, let's finish with that argument. We're not going to change the Second Amendment. We have to so leverage the United States. And by the way, they're not going to put in anything in their ports to slow the flow of commerce over their ports, the exports. We have got to leverage them for them to do more for us to stop it coming inside this country. And there's a lot more we can do. It's a very, every now and again, it moves. First it was Haiti, then it was Nicaragua, and then it's coming over the wharves and so on. A lot of people didn't pay much attention to Montego Bay until lately. But it's not insurmountable. It's not insurmountable. But let us stop this narrative about we don't make guns here. We know that. You're not going to change the Second Amendment. Let's lean on the United States how we can and get more checks on our ports and all the other things we have to do here. And we all know what they are. We all know what
Ms.
they
Grant?
are.
So,
yeah, well,
in terms of
the ports, no one is arrested. Is it that logistically difficult?
Look here, there is no problem that people can solve if you come together in a coordinated way and understand what is it that you're trying to achieve. It is the piecemeal approach and the knee-jerk approach that is causing us problems. And generally speaking, we don't know what is working in any real way from the basis of good data. So if we figure out that border security is important, and we figure out the formal and the informal ports, where they are, who is in charge of what, who is using what are the weaknesses, and so on. And we put a sensible plan in place with the right people doing the right thing with the right resources, then we can get somewhere. But that plan also has to be supported by the throughput, and the throughput in the system that we started with is the question of it's the police, it's the courts, it's the corrections and the society itself. We cannot just think that we are going to do for rather than do together. And I believe that we are not the only country in the world with customs and port problems. Other countries have hired experts to come in and help them fix what the problems are. So that if we have locals who won't comply, then you have to do what you have to do to spend the money to get it fixed. That's it.
Very well.
Can I make one quick point? No, one quick point on that. 25 years ago, there's a port security bill. What the bill sought to do at that time was to ensure that everybody who has any activity on the port was security vetted. That was stillborn. Why? Turf war between Ministry of Transport and Ministry of National Security, because they didn't want security getting a toehold on their ports. That's what killed it. 25 years ago. Still relevant.
We are entirely out of time. I have time only for you to complete this sentence I'm about to read. We probably could begin with you then, Rear Admiral. To solve the crime crisis in the short term, we must?
In the short term, it is largely a policing issue. And basically what assets we have and so on, it is going to be a matter of how we use them, how we use the tools in order to do it. We have the gray matter. Just apply it appropriately. The criminals are doing it. We need to do it some more.
Ms. Grant, complete the question, to complete the statement of your pardon. To solve the crime crisis in the short term, we must?
The whole business of how we interdict, arrest, prosecute, convict criminal offenders and start to restoring the respect for the rule of law.
Mr. Ellington, to solve the crime crisis in the short term, we must?
We must.
Short term is relative.
we could take all the offenders who are before the courts for drug offenses, gun offenses, and sexual assaults, take away their bail at next court appearance, complete their trials within the next 6 months, and send them all to prison for a minimum period of, say, 10, 15 years. And the shockwave it would send through the society would be something spoken about for generations to come. It can be done.
Well, thank you so very much for joining us.
The capacity of the system to house all of them. That's the dilemma.
There are a lot of sick people in
building, jail.
Another problem. It's a discussion we have to continue because we're entirely out of time for this section of our special Gleaner Editors Forum, looking at the crime crisis. We had today former Police Commissioner Owen Ellington, as well as Rear Admiral Hardley Lewin, and former Deputy Police Commissioner Novlette Grant. I'm Damian Mitchell. Thanks for watching.